Breaking, constitutional expert Raskin reveals alarming truth about Bondi's doe. The words hung in the air like a constitutional death sentence. Jamie Raskin, one of America's most respected constitutional scholars and the man who helped lead the 6th of January investigation, had just delivered the most devastating indictment of an attorney general in modern history. "We've got an attorney general of the United States who literally thinks her job is to be the president's lawyer," he declared, his voice carrying the weight of constitutional authority that only comes from decades of defending democracy. This wasn't political theater. This wasn't partisan hyperbole. This was a constitutional expert with unmatched credibility, sounding the alarm that America's top law enforcement official has fundamentally misunderstood her role, in ways that threaten the entire foundation of democratic governance. And what Raskin revealed next would expose a constitutional crisis so dangerous that it could reshape American democracy forever. But to understand why Raskin's words represent such an existential threat to the rule of law, you need to grasp what he discovered about how Pam Bondi actually views her job as Attorney General. Because the alarming truth isn't just that she is loyal to Trump, it is that she believes the Department of Justice exists to serve presidential power rather than constitutional principle. The revelation came during a gathering of state attorneys general, where Raskin conducted what amounted to a constitutional competency test. He asked a simple question that revealed everything. Is there any one of you who would describe your job as being the governor's lawyer exclusively? The answer was unanimous and immediate. Not one state attorney general saw themselves as the personal attorney for their governor, because that would represent a fundamental corruption of their constitutional duty. That unanimous response from state officials exposed the alarming truth about Pam Bondi's approach to federal law enforcement. While every state attorney general understands that their loyalty belongs to the rule of law rather than personal political loyalty, Bondi has apparently embraced exactly the opposite philosophy. She has transformed the Department of Justice from a constitutional guardian into what Raskin described as the law firm for the president and his political party. The constitutional implications are staggering. The Attorney General isn't supposed to be anyone's personal lawyer. The position exists to ensure that federal law is enforced equally, that justice is administered fairly, and that even presidents are held accountable when they violate the Constitution. But under Bondi's leadership, the DOJ has abandoned these principles in favor of what Raskin called a remarkable deformation and diversion of American history. Think about what this means in practice. When the Attorney General views her role as protecting the president rather than protecting the Constitution, every decision becomes political rather than legal. Investigations get opened or closed based on political convenience. Prosecutions target enemies while protecting allies. The equal application of justice, the foundation of democratic society, collapses into selective enforcement designed to serve power rather than principle. Raskin's alarm isn't theoretical. He is witnessing the real-time transformation of American law enforcement from an independent institution into a political weapon, and his constitutional expertise allows him to see where this transformation leads, toward the kind of authoritarian system where law exists to serve power rather than constrain it. The evidence for this transformation is overwhelming. State attorneys general, even when they share party affiliation with their governors, maintain institutional independence because they understand their constitutional role. They may represent the state government in court, but they don't see themselves as personal protectors of gubernatorial power. Their duty runs to the law itself, not to any individual politician. Bondi has rejected this understanding entirely. Instead of maintaining the traditional independence that protects democratic governance, she has embraced a philosophy that makes the Justice Department subordinate to presidential preference. This isn't just a policy disagreement, it is a fundamental rejection of how American institutions are supposed to function. The historical context makes this even more alarming. Raskin quoted Benjamin Franklin's observation that wrong is always growing more wrong until there is no bearing it anymore, but that right, however opposed, comes right at last. The Founding Fathers understood that institutions could be corrupted, that power would always try to capture the mechanisms meant to constrain it. They designed the Justice Department to be independent precisely because they knew that law enforcement corrupted by political loyalty becomes tyranny. What Raskin exposed is that this constitutional safeguard is already failing. The Justice Department under Bondi doesn't function as an independent check on presidential power. Instead, it operates as an extension of that power, using federal law enforcement to advance political goals rather than constitutional principles. The state attorney general comparison makes this failure impossible to ignore. When Raskin asked those officials about their role, their responses demonstrated exactly what constitutional independence looks like. Attorney General Kwame Raoul of Illinois explained it perfectly. "I serve the rule of law. I don't serve the governor. I represent the agencies within state, but I serve the rule of law, and I take that distinction very seriously." That distinction, between serving an individual and serving the law, is what Bondi has abandoned. She has collapsed the crucial separation between personal loyalty and institutional duty, creating exactly the kind of captured law enforcement that the founders feared most. The consequences extend far beyond any single case or investigation. When citizens lose faith that justice is administered fairly, when they believe that the law serves power rather than principle, the entire social contract begins to unravel. People follow laws not just because they fear punishment, but because they believe those laws are applied equally to everyone. Once that belief disappears, compliance becomes voluntary and democracy becomes impossible. Raskin understands this dynamic better than almost anyone in Congress. His work on the 6th of January committee demonstrated how institutional failures can cascade into constitutional crises. He has seen how quickly democratic norms can collapse when officials prioritize personal loyalty over institutional duty, and he is watching that same pattern repeat itself in the Justice Department under Bondi's leadership. The international implications are equally serious. America's ability to promote rule of law globally depends on maintaining credible institutions at home. When the U.S. Attorney General functions as a political operative rather than an independent prosecutor, it undermines American moral authority and provides cover for authoritarians worldwide who want to justify their own capture of law enforcement institutions. But perhaps most disturbing is how normalized this constitutional violation has become. Previous generations would have been shocked by an attorney general who openly functioned as presidential counsel. The idea that the Justice Department could serve partisan political ends rather than constitutional principles would have provoked bipartisan outrage and immediate calls for reform today. This fundamental corruption of institutional purpose is treated as routine political behavior. The alarming truth that Raskin revealed isn't just that Bondi has misunderstood her role. It is that this misunderstanding has been accepted and enabled by an entire political system that has forgotten why institutional independence matters. The state attorney general responses provide a roadmap back to constitutional governance. These officials understand that representing the government legally is different from serving individual political interests. They can defend state policies in court while maintaining the independence necessary to investigate state officials when they break the law. They prove that it is possible to serve both institutional loyalty and constitutional principle. Bondi's approach represents the complete abandonment of this balance. By viewing herself as Trump's personal attorney, she has made constitutional law enforcement impossible. The Justice Department can't investigate Trump administration officials fairly when its leader sees her job as protecting rather than policing those officials. This creates what Raskin calls a constitutional crisis. But the crisis goes deeper than most people realize. It is not just about one corrupted institution. It is about whether American democracy can survive the systematic capture of the mechanisms meant to protect it from abuse. The urgency in Raskin's voice when he delivered this warning reflects his understanding of how quickly democratic institutions can collapse once they're captured by political forces. He has studied enough history to know that republics don't usually die in dramatic coups. They decay gradually as independent institutions become instruments of power rather than constraints on power. The Justice Department represents the last line of defense against this kind of institutional capture. When it fails, when it becomes a political weapon rather than a constitutional guardian, there is no remaining institutional check on presidential power. Congress can investigate, but it can't prosecute. Courts can rule, but they depend on executive enforcement. Only the Justice Department has both the authority and the capacity to hold powerful people accountable under law. Raskin's constitutional expertise allows him to see what many Americans miss, that Bondi's transformation of the DOJ represents an existential threat to democratic governance. Once law enforcement serves power rather than principle, the rule of law becomes meaningless and constitutional government becomes impossible. The alarming truth he revealed demands immediate action. Congress must restore genuine oversight of Justice Department operations. Citizens must understand what is at stake when their top law enforcement official abandons constitutional duty in favor of political loyalty. And the American people must decide whether they want a justice system that serves the Constitution or one that serves whoever happens to hold presidential power. This isn't about partisan politics. It is about whether America remains a nation where law constrains power or becomes one where power shapes law. The choice is still ours to make. But as Raskin's warning makes clear, time is running out to preserve the constitutional principles that have protected American democracy for more than 2 centuries.